Hello everyone and welcome to the first ever episode of GSRC's Wheel Spin. I'm your host Samuel Sandwiches Reiman. With me in the booth, actually let's not call it a booth here, with me on the giant wheel I suppose, we have Sean Crackers Ambrose and Richie, what do we call Richie here, Sean? Do we call him Richie Drink a Milk Hearn?
We can. I don't mind that.
All my friends at work call me Richie 500.
Richie
There you go,
500,
Richie.
okay,
I
that's
like
even
that.
better. Yeah,
Yeah,
alright.
that's a good one. They saddled him with a good nickname, Sam.
Hey, and you know what's great about the 500? That's coming up this weekend, the Indy 500. Of course, Memorial Day weekend. This Sunday marks one of the greatest days for racing fan every single year. We start with the Monaco Grand Prix, have the Indy 500 in the middle, and have the Coca-Cola 600 at night. So, we have got three GSRC commentators here, including a former Indy 500 racing driver, Richie Hearn, to talk about all these races going on this weekend. And I'm going to start with a simple question for you both. How would you two personally rank those three races? Go ahead, Richie.
I rank it as Monaco, awesome race. Over here on the West Coast, starts early, so I get up early, so that's my first thing I watch. Obviously, we got the Indy 500. Hopefully, it doesn't rain and it starts on time. And I got that for about 3.5 hours. And unfortunately, I know this Coca-Cola 600 is coming up, and it's kind of a long race. So maybe take a nap and then try to see what happens at the end there.
Go ahead, Sean.
Sam, Indy's the first race I remember as a kid. Wide World of Sports. I'm gonna go with Indy. I'm gonna rank Indy goes one. Over the years, probably the last 25 years of my life, I've become a tremendous Formula One fan, and the appreciation for that sport and for the history of the sport is going to take me to Monaco for number two. And whereas I grew up on the oval tracks of the Northeast and watched my father knock down some of the great asphalt and walls in the Northeast as well, I got to put Charlotte third. And that little kid in me at the racetrack with my dad really hates to do that. But again, that's just where it falls on this magical day.
Well,
You know
well,
what, Sean? You had a much better answer than I did, Sean.
I
well. Here's a
wasn't
sad.
trying there, I promise.
Here's a sad thing about this. I rank a Coca-Cola 600 third of the three events too. Now, I agree with both of you two that I don't think it's a bad race. It just, to me, there's some kind of prestige at Monaco in the Indy 500 to have that a 600-mile race at NASCAR doesn't grasp. Now, initially we were going to do it chronologically, but we are totally taking this up on the fly, just like Wheel Spin. We're going round and round here on different topics. So let's start with the Coke 600, the last race of the day. Let's start discussing that. Because they are aware that, you know, a 600-mile NASCAR race in today's day and age isn't the most entertaining sport for an entertaining spectacle for a non-motor racing fan to watch. And so NASCAR last weekend was looking at something. They were looking at putting restrictor plates on the cars during the All-Star race to try and create more exciting racing. It did, but at the cost of it coming across as a little gimmicky and the cars being a little neutered. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I thought the All-Star race was great. I only got to watch the last part of it, but I think for the All-Star race, that was a perfect addition for that because it is a little gimmicky in the beginning to what they do. But, for the Coca-Cola 600, my thoughts on the whole thing with the stage racing and stuff, I think they're trying way too hard to make it appeal to the non-racing fan. And is that what we want to do? Are we, unfortunately, I think when they do that, they alienate the racing fan in you. And so if it's a 400 lap race, it should be the winner of 400 laps, not stages, not stuff like that. And it's not always going to be the best race. I understand that you can't manufacture the best game, the best race. You just got to let it play out. And when it is a great race, it's awesome. And if it's not, it's just the way it is.
Sean?
Sam, people want to jump on their sofas. They want to shout. They want to enjoy the race. They want to have fun. They want to make it a party. You know what? I think drivers, crew chiefs, team owners, tire changers, all those guys, I think they tire of that weekly routine. NASCAR is the grind in motorsports. And I will tell you, it's very, very tough. Those guys with the hard card know exactly what I'm talking about. It is a thankless life at times. And I think doing things like that for the all-star event, trying something different, I'm all for that. And who knows, sometimes you kind of luck into maybe finding something that actually works, that might produce a better brand of racing.
So did this work in your opinion?
Well, I think it took a step in the right direction. But for me personally, without getting into a whole diatribe, because we're not going to be here for 4 hours tonight, I think NASCAR has a lot of work to do on that end. And it's going to take more than just slapping a plate on a car at Charlotte for an all-star event to make strides at this point, especially with all the recent rumors out there of them possibly putting the ship up for sale.
I mean, could you imagine, Formula One's not always the most exciting races, and sometimes we get amazing races. Could you imagine them coming out and doing stage racing in Formula One? People would freak out, and I don't think they should change what they've been doing for however long. And they're trying to manufacture events that maybe just leave it alone. Just leave it alone and let it fly.
Those are the thoughts of a former Indy 500 racer right there, our good friend Richie Hearn. I agree. I think it was a good show. However, there does seem to be a certain point right now where NASCAR does not seem to be afraid that if it does see something that makes it more exciting, they say, let's give this to the fans. Even if it is a little bit more gimmicky, they really do seem to be trying to reach out to a newer fan base, to grow newer fans. Whether that's good or bad for the sport in the long run but remains to be seen. Unless, of course, it already is being seen, is the decline in NASCAR's ratings due to the fact, the chasers come along and other things. That's I'm sure, is a hotly debated topic. But you also bring up a good point here that the Monaco Grand Prix is also sometimes not exactly the most spectacular of shows, particularly in the races that it's dry. Do you think there needs to be anything done about that? Because, Formula One, I don't think it's as much, at least over in America, we don't read reports about it as much being in the crisis as we do for NASCAR, something like the NFL. But at the end of the day, Formula One's losing a bit of ratings too. How long can they keep going before they have to respond to that?
Well, I think, number one, I think the way they do the rating system on TV is completely outdated, for one thing. But, the hardcore fans are still involved, still watch it. And, you're going to get a good race or not. Formula One is more about the drama between the teams and the other things that are going on. And trying to bring it to the masses is sometimes is disastrous. And I honestly think that the best thing for Formula One to do is to help out the smaller teams, which it looks like they're doing as far as monetarily wise, and just keep it going. I think Formula One's great. We have great races, great drivers, great personalities. Sometimes it's going to be good, sometimes it's going to be bad, but that's why you watch. You just don't know what's going to happen.
Sam, I'm going to be honest with you. When it comes to Monaco, I think that sits on a pedestal all by itself. I think there's so much more pageantry and fanfare going on. There's all this activity going on surrounding the circuit throughout the race, before the race, after the race. I think it sits on another level. I don't think that race needs any improvement. Yeah, okay, so does the leader sometimes get out front and hold on to the lead? Yeah, it's an incredibly tough track to pass on. I agree. But I think, again, there's so much going on around the periphery there that it still makes it one of the real crown jewels on the Formula One calendar that doesn't really need any fixing. Does Formula One need any fixing? Well, I think, I mentioned taking steps in the right direction. I think getting rid of Emperor Ecclestone was a tremendous stride in turning things around with F1. Is it going to take some time? Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time, but I'm with Richie. I think there's some really, really talented drivers in Formula One, and I'm gonna come real close to saying, yeah, the best drivers in the world may be in Formula One. Not certainly not near as much as many races as NASCAR, but let's face it, Formula One truly a young man's game. You've got to be fit to pilot those Formula One machines, and like I said, I think the excitement of that series lies a little bit in the pageantry. But with all these great young drivers coming up, and let's face it, it's maybe getting a little bit closer at the top with the competition in the series. I think things are really kind of looking up for Formula One.
Yeah, I'm all about that. Let me just say comment on what he's saying, and I aim in on that, Sean. And I want to go back to what I was saying about the gimmicky stuff. And I know when we have rain races in Formula One, and the thing, everything gets mixed up, and it's a great race. And I know Eccleston's talked about like, oh, why don't we just artificially water down the track? And if that happens, I will stop watching. That's not what it's all about. And I think in Formula One, it's more about the personalities. Those drivers are amazing. The teams are amazing. And it's fun to like pick and choose who you're with, team-wise, driver-wise, and just root. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't.
Richie, who doesn't want to sit on a yacht and watch the race? I mean, come on, man.
I've been there for the race.
Even Kimi Raikkonen does.
I was there in 1990, and I saw Ayrton Senna qualify in the rain there, and I sat in the pool section right there, and I'll never forget it. I was 20 years old, and it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
And you had the world by the cojones. Look at you, man. Look at you.
I've got to say, Sean, that I was smiling a little bit when you mentioned Formula One has the best drivers in this day and age, because Lewis Hamilton in the press conference earlier this week was saying, we don't really have the best drivers, but he was talking about Charles Leclerc at the time. He said, here's one of them. He's coming up through the ranks, so it'll be interesting seeing what Leclerc does. Now, I think the idea of artificial rain races has kind of taken a back step for now. No one's really been talking about it a lot recently. However, one thing that does seem to keep coming up during the talk about F1 is tyres, particularly how Pirelli keeps making more and more different compounds. They have, I think it's a Hypersoft this weekend, and Pirelli was saying at the start of a weekend, this can last a full race distance. And then actually the F1 teams took it out for practice on Thursday, and I think they were saying, no, it can't. But, man, Pirelli's in a tough spot there, aren't they? I mean, I'm sure they could make tyres for 80 laps for these cars that would never lose any time. But, of course, that's not exactly what makes a good race. Do we need a tyre war again in F1? I wouldn't mind it.
Can we get the fat white guy back in the costume? I mean, come on.
What?
Not in this sport, Richie.
One thing I do like, though, is what Daniel Ricciardo said about the last race, and he said, we should use the soft tire or the super soft, whatever they call it, every race. That way you can go out and qualify on it and get a good starting spot, but you're going to start and suffer, and that will change the race up a little bit. The problem with it is right now is that the tire manufacturers have built, their technology is through the roof. And the same thing happened in Indy Car as well. We'll go into that maybe later. But the tires are so close to each other that there's not this big difference. And I think Pirelli's in a tough spot, and they're trying to entertain the fans and trying to also make it a sport per se. And so, I think, it'd be nice to see a bigger difference between the two, but you don't want to see them putting around on stones out there either. So it's a tough spot for them.
Well, you know what? I have the tires they'll be using this weekend. We have the super soft, the ultra soft, and making its F1 debut, Sam mentioned the hyper soft compounds. There used to be a time when you actually had to mix in a hard tire in there somewhere.
Well, they call I guess they're super soft. I saw something that they want them to simplify that to where every race it'll be soft, medium, and hard, not all these terms and stuff like that. And that'll be better for the fans as well to kind of just go, hey, here's the soft, medium, and hard. And they got to run two of those three. And, I enjoy the days back when they had the qualifying tires. And but even then, the tires that they built for the race weren't that good. And just technology has taken over. And it's just one of those things they got to manage.
All right,
Well,
you go ahead, Sean.
I was just gonna say, Alonso started on those ultra soft tires at the Spanish Grand Prix, and he was the only one to do it.
Yeah,
Does
absolutely.
anybody maybe, based on that, does anybody try and give it a go here at Monaco?
Well, I saw that if they do the hypersofts, they're going to have to do a bunch of pit stops. And unfortunately, the way the passing goes, I don't know. I mean, it's unfortunately Formula One has gotten to a point where, the strategy means more than anything. One thing I would like to see them do in Formula One is slow down the pit stops. Why do they need 20 people out there to change tires? Just 4 people, just like IndyCar, 4 on each tire, maybe one guy on each end for the jacks, and it'll open up the game a little bit because there's going to be more mistakes. Pit stops are slower, and it'll open up that pit stop delta. When the pit stop delta is only 20 seconds, it doesn't take much to make that up.
And I want to add on to that, actually, Richie. You bring up a good point. Not only would it make it more exciting and promote more strategy, it would be safer. I have a feeling, yes, 2 and 3 second pit stops in Formula One are incredible, but it's getting to the point right now where I think we're seeing too many ugly incidents on pit road, just because if something goes wrong in that 2 seconds, you don't have the time to catch it.
Yeah, I know Formula One's all about technology. Even when they had refueling, they had to have pressurized fueling. Why do we care about that? What does it matter if it takes 2 seconds to fuel or 10 seconds to fuel? When that guy from Ferrari got mowed down, that was the perfect time to go, you know what, let's cut this down and let's just make it a little safer. So what, the pit stops are longer? They're the same for everybody. Do I really care that they do a 2-second pit stop? No, I do not, actually. I just want to see a good, safe race.
All right, so we're about 15 minutes through here, and we have a former Indy 500 driver here with us, Sean. I think I've already mentioned that 3 times, but it's a pretty big deal for us here on GSRC.
It is a pretty big deal, Sam, yes.
And we haven't talked about the Indy 500 yet. Where do we start? Let's start with the start of it all. Bump day. Qualifying.
Okay.
Yeah. Did anything important, newsworthy, or particular happen this week during Bump Day?
Yeah, just a little bit. One of the favorites to fit the James Hinchcliffe, got bumped out, and then there's all this drama about, oh, well, this and that, the rules, this, that, and it's not fair. You know what? BS. It is fair. It's the fastest 33 that gets in the field. When Penske didn't make the race, I was hanging out with those folks back there in 95, and the drama that went on was unbelievable. Obviously Bobby Rahal didn't make the race one year, and he was the defending champion of the series. That's the way it goes, so I'm tired of these people talking about, let's change the rules. The best thing that ever for Indy is bump day. And the fact that we had it made it interesting to watch. Maybe they manufactured a little bit with everybody requalifying and blah, blah, blah. We can get into that some other time. But the fact that he didn't make the race, I feel bad for him. I know Sam Schmidt. I raced for him, and I feel bad for those guys. But I know in the end, they had the same amount of effort as everybody else, same amount of track time. His other teammates made it, and that's just the way it goes. And that's why it's so great. When I go back to Indy every year to go back there to do it, I do a vintage race. People walk up to me and ask for my autograph, and it's not because I finished third one year. It's just because when you go there, people appreciate the fact that you were the fastest 33 of that year to make the race, and that is something to be said. Hinchcliffe's going to hate himself right now, but you know what? He'll come back strong. And more power to the guys that did make the race, the one-offers and stuff like that. They put their effort out money-wise, and that's what makes this race awesome, and I love it.
Man, I think the fact that we even have a bump day this year is good, Richie. I mean, it really speaks, I think, towards the upward momentum that we're seeing IndyCar get over here over the last few years. That's the excitement for me is, there is something at stake, like it was back in your era, and not that your era. I don't want to make your era seem that long ago, man, because we're about.
It was 20 years.
Yeah, but I mean, it's that went away, and boy, there were some dire straits in between. But man, things are looking up. I'm glad that we've got a bump day that means something, and I'm certainly with you. And listen, the fastest 33 guys get in. It's not.
That's what makes it special.
You earn it.
That's what makes it special. Absolutely. And I can go on and on about this, so I'll go short. But when I qualified, it didn't matter how you thought, how fast you were going to be. You were nervous on that day, you know, and you were stressing out, and you were watching the times, and you were wondering, do I have to trim this out? Do I have to risk my neck? Do I have to get out there? And when that gun goes off on that last day, you are so relieved. And it didn't matter if you started 33rd, 15th, or 1st, you were stoked. And that's what makes it great. You know, you go to a regular race, it doesn't really matter. You just go, okay, well, I want to start here because of track position, blah, 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 blah. But that race is special just because you were the fastest 33. I would love to see, 10 cars being bumped out. Maybe we'll get there to someday, but that's what made that race great. It's 102 years old, and that's the way it's always been.
And IndyCar, I've got to be honest, over the last few years, I've been one of those who was critical of IndyCar at certain points. There's been a lot of calls from the race management that they have made over the past several years that hasn't gone over well with the drivers, hasn't gone over well with the fans. It seems that this decision for them to include bump day and have 33 cars start this race, because it was up in the question, it was up in the air as to whether they were going to do that or not this year. I think that's a decision that's gone down well with the fans. Obviously there's a lot of people upset that Hinchcliffe didn't make a race, but I think it's safe to say, I think we can all agree that IndyCar's experiencing a bit of a resurgence with a new car, bringing a couple of the old favourite tracks back. What does IndyCar need to beware of as pitfalls in the coming years? What does it need to keep doing to continue on this path?
Well, I think that what they need to do, you go on their growth. You can just see when you see new teams joining in, that's a good thing. I don't see that happening in NASCAR. I don't see new teams coming in. So when you see new teams coming in, that's a good thing. And I think what they got to do is just do steady growth. Don't do anything crazy. Keep the budget steady. Bring in new manufacturers. When I was racing in the late 90s, those were the best years, I think, because we had Mercedes, Honda, Toyota, Chevy, Ford. We had Reynard, Lola, Swift. We had Firestone and Goodyear. You start bringing that in, more teams can get involved. Competition goes up, paying drivers go down, and so that just brings everybody's game up. And so I love the way it's going. They've made some good choices. This new car has been great, but I'd like to see a little bit more variety in some of the manufacturers involved, and maybe that'll happen. But seeing new teams come in, great crop of younger drivers, Americans, whatever. And going off of what you pointed out, people are mad that James didn't get in, Hinchcliffe. But you know what? Sport is based on heroes and villains. And you got to and that's what passion is, what drives the sport. Everybody can't be happy. And that's what is good. That's why Bump Day was great. And I think hopefully we'll have a great race on Sunday.
Going back to NASCAR here, one great thing I think NASCAR's had for it over the past 10 years is Kyle Busch. Not always at times the greatest personality, but in a way at times he's been a villain. And, but he's also been a hero because of his incredible comeback stories. It's great to see racing drivers like that. Although I know you, for one, Sean, I don't believe you were too impressed with his comments last week. Am I correct?
You know what? I almost regret that you brought up Kyle Busch. We were having such a great conversation. All sour. Listen, I just think at some point you got to have a little bit of class. The act gets tired after a while, and if you don't have anything to just good to say, then maybe just say, yeah, it was a good day, thanks, and just keep it at that. I don't know. It's just like I said, his responses, his actions. He's been in the sport long enough that, boy, wouldn't it be nice to see a little bit of maturity? Yeah, everybody likes to have their villains, but I'd rather that the villain was created on the track and not at the mic behind a desk. He's no more. But behind that mic, he's no more than another keyboard warrior out there on the internet for me, to be honest with you.
I totally agree.
Great.
I'm tired of it.
Yeah. You know what? I totally agree. His act is getting tired, but he's an amazing driver. Probably the unfortunate part of those comments is that he just threw his team under the bus, and he just said, oh, it's just talent. You're not. You're good, but you're not the greatest. And so, maybe he should have just left those guys alone. It's one thing to bash your competitors. You're out there competing with those guys. They'll deal with it. But those guys have feelings. They work their butts off. That's one thing I would never do. I maybe got mad on them on the radio, but in public, never would have happened.
Richie, were you ever a villain or a hero at a race? Did you ever hear a good cheer from the crowd at the end of a race, or a couple people booing?
Nah, I was probably medium. That's probably maybe one of my downfalls. I think you got to be on one side or the other to be successful. I was very considerate, and I think I had more. I don't remember anybody booing me. But if people are booing you, that means they're paying attention. And so, look at Paul Tracy, he had both. And, I probably was more on the good guy side, but deep down inside, I had no problem trying to be the bad guy. I just didn't show it in public.
All right. So we've talked enough about IndyCar qualifying here in the future. Of course, this is going to be the first ever Indianapolis 500 with the IR18 car. What are you guys hoping to see in this race?
I think, reading the comments and stuff, they're talking about that the draft is huge. The passing's tough. I think that's good. You don't want to see a draft fest. You don't want to see, a Daytona 500 type of race out there. So I'm expecting a good race. I'm expecting that, hopefully it's hot and greasy. I know the drivers would never want that, but hopefully the conditions are nasty, windy, and the guy who can man up and handle that thing when it's not good, you'll see that shine. But I think we'll see a good race. I think the car looks stable. We haven't seen really any incidents except for one, and it should be a really good race. I'm really looking forward to it.
Sam, I'm with Richie on all of that. I think we've got great potential to maybe have one of the all-time great Indianapolis 500s this year. I like this aero package on the car. Going back to what we were talking about before, if there was one wish I had for IndyCar going forward, let's stop messing with the car. I think you might have something with this one. Yes, if you can get some more manufacturers in, I think that's great. I think that goes a long way. But this year, the Indy 500, I think this is going to be a close one, and I honestly think there are 25 cars that legitimately can win this race.
Yeah, I agree. And, I live in Vegas, so I'm going to drive down to the sportsbook tomorrow, and I'm going to lay some money down on some of these drivers. And unfortunately, I've had a lot of people ask me, and I can tell them, I could name 12 drivers who can win this race legitimately, and then another 8 who have a chance if some luck falls that way. And that makes it great. It's unpredictable. We look at the Monaco Grand Prix. That's probably pretty predictable. I'm not betting on that race. But, what I want to see, it doesn't have to be the closest finish to be a great race. I would just like to see a lot of players involved. I would like to see some mistakes happen. I would like to see some good pit stops. And I'd like to see a chase down to the end. And, I think you're right. I think with this package, leave it alone. It's good. And just let those teams figure it out, tune it, and race it.
All right, so last call here, and I'll let you guys talk about any more points you want to elaborate, but I got one last question for everyone, and I'll answer 2. Your 3 winners for Sunday. Who's going to win each race? Richie.
All right, well, I'm going to go for Max Verstappen on in the morning. And, I'm really hoping Ed Carpenter can pull it through. He's a great guy, runs his own team, hometown dude. I am going to be betting on him. I think he's 10-1 right now, so that's awesome. And as far as Sunday, I don't know. It's such a long race. Obviously, Kevin Harvick is on fire, and so to be safe, I'll pick him.
Sure.
Oof. Okay, here we go. My big picks. Give me Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari in Monaco. I like red and I like Monaco, and I think those two colors go together really well. Now I look for Vettel on Sunday morning, and Indy, I got to go back to what I said. There's just so many guys. It's almost like trying to pick somebody at Talladega for the Cup on the Cup side. I think it's going to be a total crapshoot. But man, okay. So I'm sure there's a segment of people out there who would love to see Danica Patrick win the race. I'm not going to pick her. You know what, Sam? You said something earlier before we started this that I was kind of onto myself, and I'm going to go with Helio Castroneves.
You know, I hope I said Ed Carpenter because he's a hometown dude, but honestly, I would love to see. I'm sorry to butt in on you, Sam. Here, I would love to see Helio get that 4th win. We may never see that again in our lifetime, and so it would be good, a good feel-good story for him.
Well, I'm not letting Sean out of this yet, Richie. You didn't cut me off. Sean, who's your NASCAR pick?
And then, you know what? That's the toughest one, because whereas Harvick is really hot,
Kyle Busch.
I really think that we may get a breakthrough, that a driver might find victory lane here. And could it be one of the Hendrick cars? Could it be the Byron kid? That's my pick.
That's interesting. As soon as you said Hendrick, a guy who doesn't have a win yet, I was almost thinking you would go with Chase Elliott. I'm not going to pick Chase Elliott. I'm going to change it up a bit from you two guys. I'm going to say Lewis Hamilton is going to win the Monaco Grand Prix. People who kept up with Thursday's practice are going to say, Samuel, Mercedes are off the pace. This isn't their circuit. I'm going to say, I know, but Hamilton and Mercedes do not give up. And they're very good, I think, at making it work throughout the week and continue to find improvements. And I expect they'll be there on Sunday. As far as the Indianapolis 500 goes, we've got a new car. And I think at the end of the day, it just experience with racing different kinds of cars being put in different scenarios at the Indianapolis 500 is going to pay off. That's why I think we'll see a veteran win it. So someone already picked Helio Castroneves. I'll go with Scott Dixon. The Coca-Cola 600. You bring up a good point, Sean, that every now and then we see a driver who's a front runner, but hasn't had a win in a while, pick up a W at the Coke 600. I'll tell you what, is Matt Kenseth racing this weekend? I believe he is, yeah.
He certainly is.
Yeah,
it's not a bad pick.
Yeah, let's do Kenseth. Man, now I wish I lived in Vegas, Richie, because I have a feeling I'd be getting a good comeback on this if he pulls it off.
I like that pick.
I'll put one in for you.
All right. Well, this has been our first ever episode of GSRC Wheel Spin, and we made it through, guys, without cursing at each other. Well done. Give ourselves a round of applause here.
I didn't know we could do that.
Oh yeah, this is the internet. Wait, Sean's the one with the upload button. Sean, would have you uploaded that?
Yes.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. All right, guys. Well, hey, everyone who tuned in, thank you for watching this. We're glad you enjoy what the Global SimRacing Channel has to offer. We hope you've enjoyed this first ever episode of GSRC Wheel Spin. And subscribe, push that red button down at the bottom, because we're going to have more episodes of these, as well as much more great sim racing coming up. Myself, Samuel Reiman, I'll be doing the commentary, as will our friends Sean Ambrose and Richie Hearn. We cover a diverse form of motor racing, and that allows us to have fantastic discussions like this. Once again, we thank you all for tuning in, and Sean and Richie, I think it's time to say goodnight.
Good night, Sam. Good night, Richie.
Good night, Sean, and good night, Sam. That was awesome. Really enjoyed it.
All right. And race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.